Yahuwah, for the King who is victorious. We lift our hands, we lift our voice, we celebrate our champion. We sing hallow, hallow Yahuwah, for the King who is victorious. Yahuwah is the awesome one, and there is none like you. With you we win, you're our champion. With you we can't lose, we always win, you're our champion. We lift our hands, we lift our voice, we celebrate our champion. We sing hallow, hallow Yahuwah, for the King who is victorious. Yahuwah is the awesome one, and there's none like you. With you we win, you're our champion. We can't lose, we always win, you're our champion. We lift our hands, we lift our voice, we celebrate our champion. We sing hallow, hallow Yahuwah, for the King who is victorious. We lift our hands, we lift our voice, we celebrate our champion. We sing hallow, hallow Yahuwah, for the King who is victorious. We lift our hands, we lift our voice, we celebrate our champion. We sing hallow, hallow Yahuwah, for the King who is victorious. Yahuwah is the awesome one, and there is none like you. With you we win, you're our champion. With you we can't lose, we always win, you're our champion. Yahuwah is the awesome one, and there is none like you. With you we win, you're our champion. With you we can't lose, we always win, you're our champion. We lift our hands, we lift our voice, we celebrate our champion. We sing hallow, hallow Yahuwah, for the King who is celebrate our champion. We sing halal, halal Yahuwah, for the King who is victorious. Yahuwah is the awesome one, and there is none like you. With you we win, you're our champion. With you we can lose, we always win, you're our champion. Oh, you are the awesome one, and there is none like you. With you we win, you're our champion. With you we can lose, we always win, you're our champion. Oh, Yahuwah is the awesome one, and there is none like you. With you we win, you're our champion. With you we can lose, we always win, you're our champion. Oh, Yahuwah is the awesome one, and there's none like you. With you we win, you're our champion. With you we can lose, we always win, you're our champion. Oh, we lift our hands, we lift our voice, we celebrate our champion. We sing halal, halal Yahuwah, for the King who is victorious. We lift our hands, we lift our voice, we celebrate our champion. We sing halal, halal Yahuwah, for the King who is victorious. Yahuwah is the awesome one, and there's none like you. With you we win, you're our champion. With you we can lose, we always win, you're our champion. Oh, Yahuwah is the awesome one, there's none like you. With you we win, you're our champion. With you we can lose, we always win, you're our champion. and vessels. You desire to abide in the praises of your people. So we lift our hands as we lift our hearts, as we offer up this praise unto your name. Welcome into this place. Welcome into your chosen vessel. You desire to abide in the praises of your people. So we lift our hands as we lift our hearts, as we offer up this praise unto your name. Welcome into this place. Welcome into your chosen vessel. You desire to abide in the praises of your people. So we lift our hands as we lift our hearts, as we offer up this praise unto your name. Welcome into this place. Welcome into your chosen vessel. You desire to abide in the praises of your people. So we lift our hands as we lift our hearts, as we offer up this praise unto your name. Welcome into this place. Welcome into your chosen vessel. You desire to abide in the praises of your people. So we lift our hands as we lift our hearts, as we offer up this praise unto your name. Welcome into this place. Welcome into your chosen vessel. You desire to abide in the praises of your people. So we lift our hands as we lift our hearts, as we offer up this praise unto your name. Welcome into this place. Welcome into your chosen vessel. You desire to abide in the praises of your people. So we lift our hands as we lift our hearts, we offer up this praise unto your name. Welcome into this place. Welcome into your chosen vessel. You desire to abide in the praises of your people. So we lift our hands as we lift our hearts, as we offer up this praise unto your name. Welcome into this place. Welcome into your chosen vessel. You desire to abide in the praises of your people. So we lift our hands as we lift our hearts, as we offer up this praise unto your name. Yahuwah, you're the center of my joy, and all that's great and perfect comes from you. You're the heart of my contentment, hope for all I do. Yahuwah, you're the center of my joy. Yahuwah, you're the center of my joy. And all that's great and perfect comes from you. You're the heart of my contentment, hope for all I do. Yahuwah, you're the center of my joy. Yahuwah, you're the center of my joy. And all that's great and perfect comes from you. You're the heart of my contentment, hope for all I do. Yahuwah, you're the center of my joy. Yahuwah, you're the center of my joy. And all that's great and perfect comes from you. You're the heart of my contentment, hope for all I do. Yahuwah, you're the center of my joy. Yahuwah, you're the center of my joy. And all that's great and perfect comes from you. You're the heart of my contentment, hope for all I do. the center of my joy. Yahuwah, you're the center of my joy. And all that's great and perfect comes from you. You're the heart of my contentment, hope for all I do. Yahuwah, you're the center of my joy. Yahuwah, you're the center of my joy. And all that's great and perfect comes from you. You're the heart of my contentment, hope for all I do. Yahuwah, you're the center of my joy. Yahuwah, you're the center of my joy. And all that's great and perfect comes from you. You're the heart of my contentment, hope for all I do. Yahuwah, you're the center of my joy. Yahuwah, you're the center of my joy. And all that's great and perfect comes from you. You're the heart of my contentment, hope for all I do. Yahuwah, you're the center of my joy. Yahuwah, you're the center of my joy. And all that's great and perfect comes from you. You're the heart of my contentment, hope for all I do. Yahuwah, you're the center of my joy. Yahuwah, you're the center of my joy. And all that's great and perfect comes from you. You're the heart of my contentment, hope for all I do. Yahuwah, you're the center of my joy. Yahuwah, you're the center of my joy. And all that's great and perfect comes from you. You're the heart of my contentment, hope for all I do. Yahuwah, you're the center of my joy. Yahuwah, I thirst to be in your presence. My soul will wait on you. Abba, draw me nearer. Draw me nearer to the beauty of your Ruah. Yahuwah, I thirst for you, and I long to be in your presence. My soul will wait on you. Abba, draw me nearer. Draw me nearer to the beauty of your Ruah. Yahuwah, I thirst for you, and I long to be in your presence. My soul will wait on you. Abba, draw me nearer. Draw me nearer to the beauty of your Ruah. I will wait for you, oh Yahuwah, in the beauty of your Ruah. I will worship you, oh Yahuwah, in the beauty of your Ruah. I will wait for you, oh Yahuwah, in the beauty of your Ruah. I will worship you, oh Yahuwah, in the beauty of your Ruah. Yahuwah, I thirst for you, and I long to be in your presence. My soul will wait on you. Abba, draw me nearer. Draw me nearer to the beauty of your Ruah. I will wait for you, oh Yahuwah, in the beauty of your Ruah. I will worship you, oh Yahuwah, in the beauty of your Ruah. I will wait for you, oh Yahuwah, in the beauty of your Ruah. I will worship you, oh Yahuwah, in the beauty of your Ruah. Yahuwah, I thirst for you, and I I long to be in your presence. My soul will wait on you. Abba, draw me nearer, draw me nearer to the beauty of your Ruach. I will wait for you, oh Yahuwah, in the beauty of your Ruach. I will worship you, oh Yahuwah, in the beauty of your Ruach. Yahuwah, I thirst for you, and I long to be in your presence. My soul will wait on you. Abba, draw me nearer, draw me nearer to the beauty of your I've got a praise on my lips, and I can't seem to resist. It's a praise that resounds all around. I've got a praise, and it's personal to me. It's a praise, and it's tailor-made from me. He gets the praise, and it's tailor-made from me. Come on, I've got a praise on my lips, and I can't seem to resist. It's a praise that resounds all around. I've got a praise, and it's personal to me. It's a praise, and it's tailor-made from me. He gets the praise, and it's tailor-made from me. Come on, I've got a praise on my lips, and I can't seem to resist. It's a praise that resounds all around. I've got a praise, and it's personal to me. It's a praise, and it's tailor-made from me. He gets the praise, and it's tailor-made from me. Come on, I've got a praise on my lips, and I can't seem to resist. It's a praise that resounds all around. I've got a praise, and it's personal to me. It's a praise, and it's tailor-made from me. He gets the praise, and it's tailor-made from me. Nobody but you deserves my praise. All that's within me every day. Allah Yahuwah is the highest praise. You would get the praise, and it's tailor-made from me. He gets the praise, and it's tailor-made from me. Nobody but you deserves my praise. All that's within me every day. Allah Yahuwah is the highest praise. the praise and his tailoring from me. He gets the praise and his tailoring from me. Nobody but you deserves my praise. All that's within me every day. Hello, Yahuwah is the highest praise. Who gets the praise and his tailoring from me. He gets the praise and his tailoring from me. Come on, I've got a praise on my lips, and I can't seem to resist. It's a praise that resounds all around. I've got a praise and it's personal to me. Who gets the praise and it's tailoring from me. He gets the praise and it's tailoring from me. Come on, I've got a praise on my lips, and I can't seem to resist. It's a praise that resounds all around. I've got a praise and it's personal to me. Who gets the praise and it's tailoring from me. He gets the praise and it's tailoring from me. Nobody but you deserves my praise. All that's within me every day. Oh, Yahuwah is the highest praise. You get the praise and it's tailoring from me. He gets the praise and it's tailoring from me. Nobody but you deserves my praise. All that's within me every day. Hello, Yahuwah is the highest praise. You get the praise and it's tailoring from me. You get the praise and it's tailoring from me. Come on, I got a praise on my lips, and I can't seem to resist. It's a praise that resounds all around. I've got a praise and it's personal to me. Who gets the praise and it's tailoring from me. He gets the praise and it's tailoring from me. Come on, I've got a praise on my lips, and I can't seem to resist. It's a praise that resounds all around. I've got a praise and it's personal to me. Who gets the praise and it's tailoring from me. He gets the praise and it's tailoring from me. Come on, I've got a praise on my lips, and I can't seem to resist. It's a praise that resounds all around. I've got a praise and it's personal to me. Who gets the praise and it's tailoring from me. He gets the praise and it's tailoring from me. Nobody but you deserves my praise. All that's within me every day. Oh, Yahuwah is the highest praise. You get the praise and it's tailoring from me. He gets the praise and it's tailoring from me. Nobody but you deserves my praise. All that's within me every day. Allah Yahuwah is the highest praise. You get the praise and it's tailoring from me. He gets the praise and it's tailoring from me. Come on now, God. I got a praise on my lips, and I can't seem to resist. It's a praise that resounds all around. I've got a praise and it's personal to me. It's the praise and it's tailoring from me. He gets the praise and it's tailoring from me. Come on, I've got a praise on my lips, and I can't seem to resist. It's a praise that resounds all around. I've got a praise and it's personal to me. It's a praise and it's tailoring from me. He gets the praise and it's tailor-made from me. Come on, I've got a praise on my lips, and I can't seem to resist. It's a praise that resounds all around. I've got a praise that is personal to me. It's a praise and it's tailor-made from me. He gets the praise and it's tailor-made from me. Nobody but you deserves my praise. All that's within me every day. Along Yahuwah, it's a high praise. You get the praise and it's tailor-made from me. He gets the praise and it's tailor-made from me. Nobody but you deserves my praise. All that's within me every day. Along Yahuwah, it's a high praise. The praise and it's tailor-made from me. He gets the praise and it's tailor-made from me. I got a tailor-made praise. I got a tailor-made praise. I got a tailor-made praise, and it's custom fit for him. So let the praises begin. I got a tailor-made praise. I got a tailor-made praise. I got a tailor-made praise, and it's custom fit for him. So let the praises begin. I got a tailor-made praise. I got a tailor-made praise. I got a tailor-made praise, and it's custom fit for him. So let the praises begin. I got a tailor-made praise. I got a tailor-made praise. I got a tailor-made praise, and it's custom fit for him. So let the praises begin. I got a tailor-made praise. I got a tailor-made praise. I got a tailor-made praise, and it's custom fit for him. So let the praises begin. I got a tailor-made praise. I got a tailor-made praise. I got a tailor-made praise, and it's custom fit for him. So let the praises begin. I got a tailor-made praise. I got a tailor-made praise. I got a tailor-made praise, and it's custom fit for him. So let the praises begin. I got a tailor-made praise. I got a tailor-made praise. I got a tailor-made praise, and Yahuwah, we praise you. Yahuwah, we magnify you. Yahuwah, we lift your name up high in all the earth. Yahuwah, we magnify you and Baruch your Kodesh name. Yahuwah, we lift your name up high in all the earth, high in all the earth. Yahuwah, we praise you. Yahuwah, we magnify you. Yahuwah, we lift your name up high in all the earth. Yahuwah, we magnify you and Baruch your Kodesh name. Yahuwah, we lift your name up high in all the earth, high in all the earth. Yahuwah, we praise you. Yahuwah, we magnify you. Yahuwah, we lift your name up high in all the earth. Yahuwah, we magnify you and Baruch your Kodesh name. Yahuwah, we lift your name up high in all the earth, high in all the earth. Yahuwah, we praise you. Yahuwah, we magnify you. Yahuwah, we lift your name up high in all the earth. Yahuwah, we magnify you and Baruch your Kodesh name. Yahuwah, we lift your name up high in all the earth, high in all the earth. Yahuwah, we praise you. Yahuwah, we magnify you. Yahuwah, we lift your name up high in all the earth. Yahuwah, we magnify you and Baruch your Kodesh name. Yahuwah, we lift your name up high in all the earth, high in all the earth. Yahuwah, we praise you. Yahuwah, we magnify you. Yahuwah, we lift your name up high in all the earth. Yahuwah, we magnify you and Baruch your Kodesh name. Yahuwah, we lift your name up high in all the earth, high in all the earth. Yahuwah, we praise you. Yahuwah, we magnify you. Yahuwah, we lift your name up high in all the earth. Yahuwah, we magnify you and Baruch you Kodesh name. We lift your name up high in all the earth, high in all the earth. We praise you, we magnify you, we lift your name up high in all the earth. We magnify you and Baruch you Kodesh name. We lift your name up high in all the earth, high in all the earth. We praise you, we magnify you, we lift your name up high in all the earth. We magnify you and Baruch you Kodesh name. We lift your name up high in all the earth, high in all the earth. We praise you, we magnify you, we lift your name up high in all the earth. We magnify you and Baruch you Kodesh name. We lift your name up high in all the earth, high in all the earth. We praise you, we magnify you, we lift your name up high in all the earth. We magnify you and Baruch you Kodesh name. We lift your name up high in all the earth, high in all the earth. We praise you, we magnify you, we lift your name up high in all the earth. We magnify you and Baruch you Kodesh name. We lift your name up high in all the earth, high in all the earth. We praise you, we magnify you, we lift your name up high in all the earth. We magnify you and Baruch you Kodesh name. We lift your name up high in all the earth, high in all the earth. We praise you, we magnify you, we lift your name up high in all the earth. We magnify you and Baruch Baruch Kodesh name. Yahuwah, we lift your name up high in all the earth. High in all the earth. Yahuwah, we praise you. Yahuwah, we magnify you. Yahuwah, we lift your name up high in all the earth. Yahuwah, we magnify you and Baruch Kodesh name. Yahuwah, we lift your name up high in all the earth. High in all the earth. Yahuwah, we praise you. Yahuwah, we magnify you. Yahuwah, we lift your name up high in all the earth. Yahuwah, we magnify you and Baruch Kodesh name. Yahuwah, we lift your name up high in all the earth. High in all the earth. Yahuwah, we praise you. Yahuwah, we magnify you. Yahuwah, we lift your name up high in all the earth. Yahuwah, we magnify you and Baruch Kodesh name. Yahuwah, we lift your name up high in all the earth. High in all the earth. Yahuwah, we praise you. Yahuwah, we magnify you. Yahuwah, we lift your name up high in all the earth. Yahuwah, we magnify you and Baruch Kodesh name. Yahuwah, we lift your name up high in all the earth. High in all the earth.
We do Baruch him. Come on, Baruch him. Oh, praise him. We praise you under your hill for your mighty outpour of us. We praise you because you're sovereign. We praise you because you are great. We praise you because you allow us to come to be in another Sabbath class, another time to commemorate and celebrate a time of rest. So we do appreciate him for all that he's doing, all that he's done, and all that he's yet going to do. That's why I praise him. Worthy, worthy, worthy. We're going to begin with the reading or the Baruch of the Torah. Then from there, we're going to go into the Ten Commandments. and then we're going to continue to proceed. I pray that everyone thus far has had a wonderful time in the praise and worship, and I pray that you were just not entertained, but truly that you step into that realm with him to praise him and to worship him and to esteem him, and not just once again be entertained by the singing. It is important that we understand why we sing and why we praise him. Praise is commonly for the what? The upright. And so because we are his upright vessels, we ought to praise him, whether there's a song going on or whether it's just because we think on the great things of the Abba. And when we begin to think on the great things of the Abba, it provokes us to praise him. And it is so. And it is so. And it is so, because he's great. He's awesome. He's mighty. He kept us in our right minds, kept us from having breakdowns, emotional breakdowns, natural breakdowns, just a breakdown. And so if you're still standing and you're in your right mind, you owe him a praise. That's right. You owe him a praise. We're going to Baruch him for the Torah. Repeat with me, Baruch Yahuwah.
Baruch Yahuwah.
The Baruch one.
The Baruch one.
Baruch is Yahuwah.
Baruch is Yahuwah.
The Baruch one.
The Baruch one.
For all eternity.
For all eternity.
Baruch atah.
Baruch atah.
Yahuwah.
Yahuwah.
Our supreme one.
Our supreme one.
King of the universe.
King of the universe.
Who selected us from all the peoples.
Who selected us from all the peoples.
And gave us his Torah.
And gave us his Torah.
Baruch atah.
Baruch atah.
Yahuwah.
Yahuwah.
Giver of the Torah.
Giver of the Torah.
And it is so.
And it is so.
Baruch atah.
Baruch atah.
Yahuwah.
Yahuwah.
Our supreme one.
Our supreme one.
King of the universe.
King of the universe.
Who gave us the Torah of truth.
Who gave us the Torah of truth.
And implanted eternal life within us.
And implanted eternal life within us.
Baruch atah.
Baruch atah.
Yahuwah.
Yahuwah.
Giver of the Torah.
Giver of the Torah.
And it is so.
And it is so.
And it is so.
And it is so.
Now we will have the reading of the 10 Commandments done by Mattathias, and it is so.
And it is so.
Devarim 5:6-22. Aleph. I am Yahuwah, your power, which brought you out of the land of Mizraim from the bed of slavery. Bet, you shall have no other power before me. You shall not make you any graven image or any likeness of anything that is in Shemayim above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in Mayim beneath the earth. You shall not bow down yourself unto them, nor serve them, for I, Yahuwah, your power, am a jealous power, visiting the iniquity of the hours upon the children unto the third and fourth generation of them that hate me, and showing mercy unto thousands of them that hide me and keep my commandments. Gimel, you shall not take the name of Yahuwah your power and falsify it, for Yahuwah will not hold him guiltless that takes his name and empties it. Dalet, guard the Sabbath day to set it apart, as Yahuwah your power has commanded you. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of Yahuwah your power. In it you shall not do any work, you, nor your son, nor your daughter, nor your manservant, nor your maidservant, nor your ox, nor your ass, nor any of your cattle, nor your foreigner that is within your gates, that your manservant and your maidservant may rest as well as you. And remember that you were a servant in the land of Mizraim, and that Yahuwah your power brought you out of there through a mighty hand and by a stretched out arm. Therefore Yahuwah your power commanded you to keep the Sabbath day. Hey, esteem your Abba and your Ima as Yahuwah your power has commanded you, that your days may be prolonged and that it may go well with you in the land which Yahuwah your power is about to give you. Wa, you shall not murder. Zain, neither shall you commit adultery. Het, neither shall you steal. Tet, neither shall you bear false witness against your neighbor. Yud, neither shall you desire your neighbor's Isha, neither shall you covet your neighbor's bed, his field, or his manservant, or his maidservant, his ox, or his ass, or anything that is your neighbor's. These words Yahuwah spoke unto all your assembly in the mount out of the midst of the fire, of the cloud, and of the thick darkness with a great voice. And he added no more. And he wrote them in 2 tables of stone and delivered them unto me. And it is so.
And it is so. Devarim chapter 6, verses 1-18, and it reads, These are the commandments, the statutes, and the judgments which Yahuwah your power commanded to teach you, that you might do them in the land where you are going to possess it, that you might fear Yahuwah your power to keep all his statutes and his commandments, which I command you, you and your son and your grandson, all the yamim of your life, and that your yamim may be prolonged. Hear therefore, O Yasharal, and observe to do it, that it may be well with you, and that you may increase mightily as Yahuwah power of your Abbas has promised you in the land that flows with milk and honey. Shema Yasharal. Yahuwah is our power. Yahuwah is Akkad. Hear, O Yasharal, Yahuwah our supreme one. Yahuwah is Akkad. And you shall ahab Yahuwah your supreme one with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your might.
And these words which I command you this yom shall be in your heart, and you shall teach them diligently unto your children, and shall talk of them when you sit in your bed, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise up. And you shall bind them for a sign upon your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. To fall to what?
Bind to the mind.
To bind to the mind. Give the Torah access to your mind. That's the only way you're going to be able to understand it.
That's right.
And you shall write them upon the posts of your bed and on your gates. And it shall be when Yahuwah your power shall have brought you into the land, which he swore unto your fathers, to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Yaakov, to give you great cities which you did not build, houses full of all great things that you filled not, wells dug which you did not dig, vineyards and olive trees which you did not plant. When you shall have eaten and be full, then beware lest you forget Yahuwah, which brought you forth out of the land of Mitzrayim, from the bed of slavery. Verse 12 is so important for us to maintain, because the moment we start advancing, this is when the enemy shows up in our lives. And you have to understand, and I'm not talking about trying to tear up your life. I'm talking about trying to make us become melancholy, trying to make us become docile, dorsal, however you say it, make us get to a point to where we feel like we don't have to fight as hard as we did. He don't care about your money. He cares about your belief.
That's right.
He cares about our motivation, about being motivated because of the Abba. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
This is very important that we not forget, because that is his whole purpose, is to get us to a place in our lives where we feel like now that everything is flowing, we don't have to fight as hard to maintain. This is where you have to fight harder, because now things are easy, accessible. Now the enemy says, oh, you don't have to fight as hard. You don't have to pray as hard. You don't have to read as long. That's when you have to read longer, fast longer, and pray harder.
Right.
Because the enemy is right there always to challenge us and always to try to make you feel comfortable and become confident in your possessions instead of the one who's giving you the possessions.
That's right.
And a house full of all great things which you did not, once again, fill. And wells dug which you did not dig, and vineyards and olive trees which you did not plant. When you shall have eaten and be full, then beware lest you forget Yahuwah, which brought you forth out of the land of Mitzrayim, from the bed of slavery. You shall fear Yahuwah your power and swear by him. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
By his name. You shall not go after the power of the people which are round about you. For Yahuwah your power is a jealous power among you, lest the anger of Yahuwah your power be kindled against you, and he destroy you from off the face of the earth. You shall not tempt Yahuwah your power as you tempted him in Massah. You shall diligently keep the commandments of Yahuwah your power and his testimonies and his statutes, which he has commanded you. And you shall do that which is right in the sight of Yahuwah, that it may be well with you, and that you may go in and possess the great land which Yahuwah swore unto your fathers. And it is so.
And it is so.
And it is so. Let us turn our attention to Yahush, the son of Nun, chapter 1. And we're going to look at verse 7, and we're going to recite verse 8. Everybody's there? All right. We're going to read. Only be you strong and very courageous, that you may observe to do according to all the Torah which Moshe, my servant, commanded you. Turn not from it to the right hand or to the left, that you may prosper wherever you go. Verse 8, as I have tailored it to fit our time of personal confession. Let's read this together. Repeat with me. I will not let this scroll of the Torah.
I will not let this scroll of the Torah
Depart out of my mouth.
depart out of my mouth,
But I shall meditate in it.
but I shall meditate in it,
Yom and Layla.
Yom and Layla,
That I may observe to do
that I may observe to do
according to all that is written in it.
according to all that is written in it.
For then I shall make my way prosperous.
And then I shall make my way prosperous,
And then I shall act wisely.
and then I shall act wisely.
Now look at your neighbor and tell your neighbor, you shall act wisely, and you shall act wisely. Look at your other neighbor and tell your other neighbor, you shall act wisely, and you shall act wisely. Come on, let's look at your other neighbor and tell your other neighbor, you shall act wisely, and you shall act wisely. Why don't nobody want to look at me? And you shall act wisely.
You shall act wisely.
Yeah, and you shall act wisely. Exactly. Everybody's looking all around the room. Don't nobody want to look at me? All right. And you shall act wisely. Now take your hand and place it over your heart and say, Abba Yahuwah,
Abba Yahuwah,
I shall act wisely.
I shall act wisely.
Come on, Abba Yahuwah,
Abba Yahuwah,
I shall act wisely.
I shall act wisely.
I am determined
I am determined
to act wisely.
to act wisely.
Come on, I am determined
I am determined
to act wisely.
to act wisely.
Say it again. I am determined
I am determined
to act wisely.
to act wisely.
And it is so.
And it is so.
And it is so. Now remember, when you say this, even though you may not say the name of Abba Yahuwah, you are still letting the Abba know, I am determined no matter what, because I put my heart on it. To do what? To act wisely.
Yeah.
So before we can act wisely, we have to do what? We have to read, and what else?
Pray.
Pray. Before we do anything, it is imperative that we pray. Are y'all hearing me?
Yes.
Very important that we pray. Because if we don't pray, then we will be subject to fall at the helm of the enemy. This is important. Understand something. I'm not telling you because of because of my vision or my sight is short. I'm telling you this because I can see. And if you don't listen, then guess what happens? Up the road, you pay for it.
Right.
You pay for it up the road. You're going to pay for it for being hard-headed. And that's the truth. Whether you like it or not, you're going to pay for it for being hard-headed.
That's it.
I don't hear nobody agreeing. And it comes a point where you have to understand, if you're wrong, you're wrong. If you're right, you ain't got no reason not to say God or to agree. But if it hits you, you repent and you move forward.
That's right.
But it's time that we do what we're told to do, bottom line. And what I say to you, I say to everybody. And that is the truth. We've got to continue to be obedient, because you have to understand, obedience is better than sacrifice, and to hearken than the fat of rams. Fat was the portion that represented the shalom. If you are disobedient, there is no shalom between you and the Abba.
That's right.
I ain't getting that many cons up in here. Con. So it is important that we understand these things. I know people don't like this. I know they don't. You know why they don't like it? Because they don't like to be told when they're wrong. But it's important that you understand, if you're wrong, then take that and get it right. Because a leader worth their salt is going to tell you that's wrong and get it right. And that's the bottom line. And it is so.
And it is so.
And it is so. All right. Mishlei 15:8, the sacrifice of the wicked is an abomination, hateful, and exceedingly offensive unto you, Abba Yahuwah, but the prayer of the upright, it is your delight. Mishlei 3:4, so shall you find esteem, great esteem in the sight of Yahuwah and man. Ayah 33:4, the Ruach of Yahuwah hath made me, and the breath of the Almighty hath given me life. Somebody say he's a life giver.
He's a life giver.
Say it like you mean it. He's a life giver.
He's a life giver.
Micah 3:8, but truly I am full of power by the Ruach of Yahuwah, and of judgment and of might, to declare unto Yaakov his transgression, and to Yasharal his sin. Very important that we understand that. Very important we understand that. Tehillim 34:15, the eyes of Yahuwah are upon the upright, and his ears are open unto our cry. Verse 17, the upright cry, and Yahuwah heareth, and delivereth them out of all their troubles. And it is so.
And it is so.
Acts 1:8, something we must really remember. Really remember. It is important that we finalize, and what I mean by this when I say finalize, it is important that we not stop seeking him to be filled with the Ruach. Are y'all feeling me?
Yes.
It's important. Why? Because you have to understand, when you transition from Christianity, it doesn't mean that now we stop seeking to be filled.
That's right.
Christianity represented it in a negative way and in the wrong way. But just because they presented it in that way doesn't make it wrong to seek after the Ruach HaKodesh.
Right.
We need her in our lives, because without her, then how are we supposed to understand not just the scriptures, but how are we supposed to maintain and what power keeps us from going straight if we don't have that power? We have the option to have this power, and we need to make sure we seek her. Acts 1:8 tells us, but you shall receive power after that. The Ruach is come upon you, and you shall be witnesses unto me both in Jerusalem and in all Judea and Samaria and unto the uttermost part of the earth. First of all, in order to be a witness, we got to have the witnesser on the inside. Because without the witness, guess what? We won't stop to tell people when they're wrong. It's the truth. We'll continue to let people say and do, and they're wrong. You're going to make people angry with you, but that's all right. Because the ones that want to do right are going to listen and say, well, what am I doing wrong? Because I want to do right. That we after the ones that want to do right. Once again, we can't get comfortable and just allow things to continue to go. We've got to be that person or that voice that brings about change. And when you are filled with the Ruach, you have to understand she's going to give you what to say, when to say it, and at the appointed time. This is so important for us as a people so that we don't just begin to become like everybody else and say, well, that's not what I'm supposed to say, so I just let people talk. No, you don't just let people talk. You're supposed to interject. Is that not what the writings tell us, that we'll be a witness? You know what a witness is?
Yes.
Everybody know what a witness is?
Yes.
Hand by hand. Show me your hands. All right. A witness does what? Is able to testify of the great things of the Abba. Through your testimony, you are able to win or, watch this, or lose people. Because one or two things, either people are going to accept that testimony or they're going to reject it. Most of the time, people don't want to hear that. And if they feel like they can basically not have to hear it, they will.
That's right.
But we're here for truth. This is not Christianity. So we don't do things like Christianity does it. We don't do like we used to do. This is a whole nother format and a whole nother formula in winning people. And if people don't like it, you continue to pray for them. Because you never know. What if that person leaves and dies without you being able to tell them that that way is wrong? Now, watch this. That opportunity has just escaped you. So what if that means their blood will be required at your hand? Y'all follow me?
Yes.
This is important for us to understand. That's why every opportunity that we have, especially when we're dealing with what? Our people. We have to open up our mouths and speak so that we can ensure that a seed is being planted. It's up to them to accept it. If they reject it, it's not up to you to force them. But it is up to us to be a witness. And after you've done that, then there's nothing else that can be done. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
Very important. Tehillim 1:1. Baruch is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the unrighteous, nor standeth in the way of sinners, nor sitteth in the seat of the scornful, but his delight is in the instructions of the Abba, and he doth meditate upon them, and it is so.
And it is so.
Ibram 11:6. But without belief it is impossible to please him, for he that cometh to Yahuwah must believe that he is, and that he is a rewarder of them that diligently seek him. Diligently seek him. Are y'all feeling me?
Yes.
Reason why I'm saying this is because it is important. Whenever the watchman sees the enemy coming and they do not sound the alarm, guess what? That blood will be required at the hand of that leader. Now you have to understand something. We are in a time of war. Mental, physical, emotional, economical. We're in war. And if we don't acknowledge that and recognize that, guess what the enemy will do? He will set up a sniper and take you out.
That's right.
Snipers don't run around. You know what snipers do? They post up. And snipers get the people that are constantly being so distracted with other things that they forget that they have an enemy. We know this because we're gamers. And not only we're gamers, but there's certain things you know just about in the military. So it's important that we always keep that footing and never ever stand flat-footed. Always stay on the balls of your feet. Why? Because it keeps you agile and it keeps you in a position to be able to move. I'm not talking about like a rabbit. You see the slightest thing, now you gone. No, I'm talking about being able to move if something comes your way to get out of it so that it doesn't harm you. It's important. It's tight, but it's right. Because if we don't build a foundation and if we don't stable ourselves, we will constantly be a target of the enemy. And eventually, you have to understand, while we're sleeping, he's awake. He's always strategizing. He's always looking at ways to overthrow us. He's always looking for a means to destroy our belief in the Abba. And this is why we have to stay up on it. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
Very important for us to understand this. Because if we don't, then what happens is we will be destroyed. And I don't know about you, but I didn't come this far to lose my life. I didn't. I did not come this far to just be a sideliner, or watch this, or just be a piece. You know, just a centerpiece. Not seeing really anything really move, but just a centerpiece. No, he gave us authority, and we need to utilize that authority. And the only way we can tap into that authority is we've got to truly live according to the instructions that he's given unto us, and put on the whole armor. See, like I said, you got to understand, the enemy ain't gonna always come at you, you know, head on. He's gonna come at you sometime by sideways. He's gonna try to come through that side door. And this is why we have to stay geared up. This is why we have to stay vigilant and stay sober. Because the enemy is not a roaring lion, but he's like one. And we know what lions can do. So if he's acting like one, then we know that he has some type of authority and power.
That's right.
Just not all power and authority. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
His tactics haven't changed. He just know we know that we're the people, and he's going to continue to do super stuff. But we've got to stay up on it. Now, it's important we understand that at this time we're going to do our affirmations, and then from our affirmations, we are going to do our Baruch. But before we do that, I'm going to read Yahushua and Aleph chapter 5. And it's important that I read this because this is a point where so many people are giving up. This is a point where so many of our people are leaving the belief because they do not believe that Yahushua is the Mashiach. Because they've been told a lie, because somebody read up on something, they found something, and watch this. And this is why on Yom Kamishi, which is on Thursdays, I am teaching and I am talking about the Kabbalah. I know today or to Yom is the Sabbath, but I want to bring this forth. Why? Because so many of our people are being blindsided because we're listening to stuff and because people say, you know, I got this information, and you know what? This information, everybody don't have it. That's a problem. I'm not saying everybody's going to be on the same level, but nothing that the Abba gives to us is a secret. Even as a Mora, I understand there are some things I can get that I may understand that nobody else may understand, but it doesn't mean it's a secret. It just means that he has not revealed certain aspects or certain things to other people. That doesn't make it a secret. But when you start bringing out private interpretations and books that were hidden, and these things have not been tested and proven, are y'all hearing me?
Yes.
Now you have people that's on a tangent all over the place. Now they read one verse, and now they're saying the Mashiach doesn't exist. The Mashiach is not real. Nobody else but Yahuwah is who I'm serving. Because he's this, then the first thing they say, we don't serve this European, or they say white man. First of all, you getting two theories and two concepts mixed up. This is the problem. And so when you got all these people out here being teachers of themselves, they become a law unto themselves. And this is why so many of our people are being blindsided and getting outside. Why am I adding these sidebars? Because it is important that we understand. If you continue to follow this and look at it as just a ritual and something to do every day just to get by, then you're going to be one of the main ones that the sniper picks off. Because it becomes a habit. We don't keep the Sabbath out of a habit. We keep it because it is what we're supposed to do, and we are doing what we do. Gone. We are doing what we do. It's not because we understand that if we don't keep it, we will be in trouble. But the number one thing ought to always stay on your mind. If I don't keep it, does that mean that my relationship with him will be strained or will be disconnected? And if that's what's important to you, then that is the thrust and that is the motivation for you keeping everything that he said to keep.
That's right.
If it is not, then what is your motive? Well, I don't want to struggle in this place. I don't want to be left in this place. Well, you're going to be left one way or the other because it's about relationship.
That's right.
Are y'all following me?
Yes.
It's very important for us to understand these things. Why is it important for us to understand these things? Because if it is not the relationship that you desire to have with him, then guess what? When you feel like you could do what you could do on your own and you have the means, you ain't going to fight as hard to maintain that relationship. That's why he said, don't forget him. I used to question that. Why would a people forget you? You know why our ancestors forgot him? Because they felt like when they got what they needed, they didn't need him anymore.
That's right.
I will forever need him.
That's right.
That's right.
Regardless if I have or I don't have, I will always need him, and I will never ever let him forget it. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
You'll never let him forget it. Somebody say, well, he can't forget it. Yeah, but you're always supposed to maintain yourself in that position to never let him forget it.
That's right.
Because if it was possible for us to forget, he would have never said, don't do it. So that means it's a possibility that these things can come about. And this is why we have to stay up. And this is why Yehukanan had such a fight in his time. And people called him crazy. People said he had a sunstroke. People have, if you look at the history of Yehukanan, and really because he wrote even Revelations, they said that when he was on the Isle of Patmos, that he had a stroke, a heat stroke. They said so many things about him to discredit him and to challenge his credibility concerning the writings. So when you discredit a person, that means that people will begin to question the validity and question that what they're giving. This is how the enemy works. And so when that happens, what happens to us as a people? Then we start vacillating because we're trying to figure out, well, if that's the truth, then how come this sounds like this? Well, how come that sounds like that? Remember, Yahuwah said, my sheep know my voice, and a stranger they will not follow. He was echoing what the Abba had said. So if we walk with the Abba and we're learning him, then we know there are some things that are just erroneous. And we don't have to go digging and trying to get somebody to agree with us on it. We know by his writings and by his voice. His word is his voice. And we can never let down, because let me tell you something. He is like a robber. People think, well, a person, when they come in and rob, they don't go into one room. They go through your whole house. Mm-hmm. And anything of value, they go in there and they take it. And when they're finished, it's all up to them whether they want to destroy it or whether they want to leave it and hit it a second time. That's what the enemy does. The moment he gets a foothold in there, he ain't going to stop till he pillages you and ain't nothing left. That's what he does. So we must keep the gatekeeper. We must keep ourselves grounded, and we must remember that without Yahushua, we do not have eternal life. And the thing of it is, we should never get to a point where we're so comfortable that we feel like, man, I got this. I can never lose this. Our ancestors probably felt that same way, but they lost out. And I don't know about you, but I'm not trying to be part 3 or part 4 of that. I'm not. I'm in it to win it, and I'm in it to see it through. And not get across the Reed Sea just to be destroyed. But get across and to be able to live and to experience the great things that the Abba desires to show to us and share with us as his people. And that's the truth. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
It's important that we understand that. Yehukanan Aleph, chapter 5, verses 1 through 15, and it reads, everyone who believes that Yahushua the Mashiach has been born of Yahuwah, and everyone who loves or ahabs the one bringing forth also ahabs the one having been born of him, meaning that I can't ahab Yahush without ahabing Yahuwah. I can't ahab Yahuwah without ahabing Yahush. I have to, it's got to be a dual thing. By this we know that we ahab the children of Yahuwah when we ahab Yahuwah and guard his commands. This is how we know we ahab one another. For this is the ahava for Yahuwah, that we guard his commands, and his commands are not difficult, because everyone having been begotten of Yahuwah overcomes the world. And this is the overcoming that has overcome the world. What? Our belief. Our belief in what? In Yahuwah sending a redeemer in the personhood of his son, Yahush our Mashiach, and believing in Yahush and not denying that and not refuting that or refusing that. Right. Who is the one who overcomes the world but he who believes that Yahush is the son of Yahuwah? This is the one that came by water and blood. Yahush Mashiach, not only by water, but by water and blood. And it is the Ruach who bears witness, because the Ruach is the truth. Because there are 3 who bear witness, the Ruach and the water and the blood. And the 3 are in agreement. Important. Agreement. So if man does not agree, it doesn't matter. What matters is that Yahuwah gave us an agreement that is eternal. Okay. So everyone that changes their confession and changes their agreement concerning Yahush, That doesn't matter in that respect. What matters is that Yahuwah gave us an eternal agreement that cannot be dissipated or cannot be erased or wiped away by man's opinion or by man's statement. Can't be. If we receive the witness of men, the witness of Yahuwah is greater. Somebody say greater.
Greater.
Because this is the witness of Yahuwah, which he has witnessed concerning his son. The one who believes in the son of Yahuwah has the witness in himself. The one who does not believe Yahuwah has made him a liar, because he has not believed the witness that Yahuwah has given concerning his son. And this is the witness that Yahuwah has given us eternal life. And this life is in his son. He who possesses the son possesses life. He who does not possess the son of Yahuwah does not possess life. I have written this to you who believe in the name of the Son of Yahuwah, so that you know that you possess everlasting life, and so that you believe in the name of the Son of Yahuwah. And this is the boldness that we have in him. In who? In Yahush, through Yahuwah, because Yahuwah is the one who sent him. That if we ask whatever according to his desire, he hears us. This is why we need to know what his desire is for our lives. His desire is for us to be whole and complete.
Yes.
He desires it. So when we ask him, he won't refuse us. He won't refuse us. And if we know that he hears us, whatever we ask, we know that we have the petitions that we have asked of him. And this is why it is important that we don't change up on him in midstream.
God.
We can't afford to. And even if we could, we still should not.
God.
And that's a big if, because we can't. But so important that we do not. Why? Because you have to understand, we're in crucial times, and these times are trying for everybody. If you are a believer, it's trying times for you. Why? Because the enemy is trying to destroy our belief in the Mashiach. And if he destroys our belief in the Mashiach, it's not long before our belief in Yahuwah will be destroyed. They're connected. So it's important that we not do this and we not follow up into these things. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
Very important. And like I say, it's important to understand that. And it is so.
And it is so.
All right. Our affirmations. This is what we desire. This is what we purpose to do. And this is what we do and should do on a day-to-day basis. And every time we read this, it should always provoke us every Sabbath to desire to be more and to grow more and to do more after we come from the Sabbath.
God.
We should never go back from the Sabbath the same way that we entered the Sabbath before.
God.
That beginning of that new Yamim, we ought to have a mindset. I'm refreshed, I'm rejuvenated, I'm revived. Now I'm ready to tackle some other things. We should never leave out the same way as we've entered.
That's right.
This is why we have affirmations to remind us of these things so that we don't, that we never find ourselves getting in that place. And it is so.
And it is so.
All right, repeat with me. I purpose to develop my Ruach.
I purpose to develop my Ruach.
I purpose to walk in the light of Torah.
I purpose to walk in the light of Torah.
I am Ibrahim.
I am Ibrahim.
I am born again.
I am born again.
I am Ibrahim.
I am Ibrahim.
I have the life and nature
I have the life and nature
of Yahuwah in my Ruach.
of Yahuwah in my Ruach.
That life is the Torah of Yasharal.
That life is the Torah of Yasharal.
I purpose to walk in
I purpose to walk in
the Torah of life.
the Torah of life.
Yahuwah's Torah,
Yahuwah's Torah.
Yahush,
Yahush
is in me.
is in me.
Yahuwah's knowledge
Yahuwah's knowledge
is in me.
is in me.
Yahuwah's ahab
Yahuwah's ahab
is in me.
is in me.
Yahuwah's power
Yahuwah's power
is in me.
is in me.
Yahuwah's wisdom
Yahuwah's wisdom
is in me.
is in me.
He is teaching me.
He is teaching me.
He is leading me.
He is leading me.
I am a child of Yahuwah.
I am a child of Yahuwah.
The Ruach
The Ruach
HaKodesh
HaKodesh
of Yahuwah in me
of Yahuwah in me
is leading me.
is leading.
I'll follow her leading.
I'll follow her leading.
I'll walk in the Torah,
I walk in the Torah.
Yahush,
Yahush,
our Mashiach.
our Mashiach.
And it is so.
And it is so.
Yes, I will. I know many people have an issue, but that's all right. It's important that we understand if we don't walk in truth, we're in trouble.
God.
We're in trouble. We're in trouble. We're in trouble. And so it is important that we understand our walk and that what he has set before us. This is our declaration. Repeat with me, Abba Yahuwah,
Abba Yahuwah,
in the name of Yahush,
in the name of Yahush,
our Mashiach,
our Mashiach,
we subdue ignorance
we subdue ignorance
with Torah knowledge.
with Torah knowledge.
And through this knowledge
And through this knowledge
of Torah truth,
of Torah truth,
we claim healing,
we claim healing,
shalom,
shalom,
and deliverance.
and deliverance.
We decree
We decree
Torah truth
Torah truth
in the lives
in the lives
of your people,
of your people,
our people, Yasharal.
Yasharal.
We unite,
We unite
not to fight,
not to fight,
not to fight
not to fight
each other,
each other,
but the enemy
but the enemy
of our belief.
of our belief.
And it is so.
And it is so.
And it is so. I decree a time of rest, shalom, and truth in Yahuwah through Yahushua our Mashiach. And it is so.
And it is so.
As we come here at this point to seal our time of praise, prayer, and worship, let us bow before our King. And let us take this time to examine everything that we are about to confess for a moment. And then let us recite it. And it is so. May the utterance of my mouth
May the utterance of my mouth
and the deliberation of my heart
and the deliberation of my heart
be desirable before you,
be desirable before you,
O Yahuwah,
O Yahuwah,
my rock
my rock
and my redeemer.
and my redeemer.
May the utterance of my mouth
May the utterance of my mouth
and the deliberation of my heart
and the deliberation of my heart
be desirable before you,
be desirable before you,
O Yahuwah,
O Yahuwah,
my rock
my rock
and my redeemer.
and my redeemer.
And it is so.
And it is so.
And it is so. You may be seated in his presence as we are gathered here on this great Yom. We appreciate the honor for yet another opportunity to celebrate not just a Sabbath, but also to celebrate Shavuot. Many may be celebrating it to Yom, and many may not be celebrating it. But we are celebrating it because this is the time and this is the season for us to celebrate Shavuot. And with that being said, we're going to turn our attention to the writings, and we're going to begin in Shema, and we're going to walk our way through. So what we were doing and what we would do on to Yom, I postponed it till next Yom so that we can show and celebrate this time Shavuot, which is also known as the Feast of Weeks and Pentecost, a time that we have reached the end of the count of our Omer. Well, someone would probably ask the question, well, how did you get to that place? How do you know when it is the right time? And this is why I want us to go through this so that everyone will understand how we got to our count. And it is so.
And it is so.
All right. Let us first turn our attention to Bereshit, chapter 1. I'm going to look at verse 14. All right. Everyone's there? All right. Everybody's there?
Yes.
All right. Come on, read that for me.
Bereshit 1:14, and it reads, And power said, Let lights come to be in the expanse of the heavens, of Shemayim, to separate the day from the Layla, and let them be for signs and appointed times, and for days and years.
And it is so. Read that for me one more time.
And power said, Let lights come to be in the expanse of the Shemayim, to separate the Yom from the Layla, and let them be for signs and appointed times, and for days and for years. And it is so.
Read to 15 for me too.
And let them be for lights in the expanse of the Shemayim, to give light on the earth. And it came to be so.
And it is so.
And it is so.
All right. Once again, that's Bereshit, with this, which is also known in the English or Greek, is Genesis 1, 14, and 15. Now, someone will say, but how do you get to that? That still doesn't make any sense. He gave us on how we are to find the time we are supposed to celebrate these things. All right, let me see. Because I want to show us. Yeah, all right. From March, let me get my paperwork, which would be our March. When I say March, I'm showing which would be according to the Gregorian calendar, March 19th and the 20th. I did. Okay. Now, I have one calendar here. All right. When we look at the calendar, according to, and I'm going to go back. Let's see. All right. Okay, here it is. All right. Just give me a second to. All right. I'm going to kind of work backwards a little bit for those that are here to show everybody's with me.
Yes.
All right. Once again, this is not according to the class as we normally have it, but this is still just as great, probably even a little more informative, especially with showing people how we have come to the place of Shavuot, the time of Feast of Weeks, or the time of Pentecost. It is because we've been given in the scriptures on how to, or when we are supposed to follow the how to come up with, the time we are supposed to keep the feast. Now, according to Bereshit 1 and 14 and 15, it tells us that these were put in place for this reason as we celebrate. 1 and 14 tells us, and power said, let lights come to be in the space of the Shemayim, to separate the Yom from the Layla, and let them be for signs and appointed times, and for Yamim and years, and let them be for lights in the space of the Shemayim, to give light on the Arabs. And it came to be so. This is how we established when and how we are supposed to keep the feast. Now, for many, we tend to follow what is put before us, and I don't knock it as long as it's right. We don't follow the lunar, we follow the solar, because this is what it was established upon, light. The sun does not follow the moon does what? Follow the sun. So it's important that we understand that. So someone would say, well, how do we establish that? Well, when you look on your calendar, and I have one before me, for 2019, and if you go back into 2018, the first day of spring was established on March the 19th. Somebody will say, what does that have to do with anything? Well, this is where we look at the equinox, not the equilux, the equinox. This is when the sun it comes in, and this is where it is not where it is the day and the light, because equinox is when the night and day are of equal time. We're not talking about that. Not talking about that. I want to make sure we establish that, because I'm going to read how to distinguish between those two. But this is the time where the sun comes in and we see it, and you can verify this if you're in the north. And even any place you can verify that this is where the sun is not so much, once again, equal with daylight, but this is where we see it travels, because this is where the season changes. So on March the 19th of last year, spring began, which tells us what? The season changes. This year, on March the 20th, is when the first day of spring came about. Why did it come spring? Because this is where the change came in. This is where we see the change. And so whenever you see the change, and this is where we began to see the changing over from seasons. From that time is where you began your count. Are you following me?
Yes.
From that time begins our count. Wherever the first day of spring or the first day the season changes is where we begin our count. So if we begin our count we did it this year on the 20th, March 20th, and follow me. And I'm going to show you how people are off because according to the rabbis, this is how you get, this is a leap year. They added another month, which is 30 days, which causes the count to be off. But one thing about the equinox, it does not change. That's why he said, use this to establish your seasons and your yom and your yamim, because it does not change. So if our count doesn't change, maybe just say maybe by 1 or 2 days, it's still going to stay within the 19th, the 20th, and the 21st. Anything that goes beyond that now, man has manipulated it. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
Why? Because the sun and everything that's set in the solar system has already been given a command to do what it's supposed to do in the cycling of a season. Am I making sense?
Yes.
All right. So we counted from the 20th. So if we start on March the 20th and we start counting, somebody said, well, how do you get to know when to keep the Passover? I don't want to get ahead of myself. So we start on the 20th of March. That established when we were to keep what? The Feast of Passover. Now let us go into Shemot chapter 23. Which is Exodus 23. And I want to show you, and then we're going to go back and we're going to look at the leap year month. Or reason why they brought it out to be the leap year.
And it is so. It is.
All right. Now, chapter 23. And we're going to read beginning at verse verse 10. Let's start at verse 10. Chapter 23, verse 10. And we're going to read.
And it is so.
All right. You got it? Come on. Come on.
Shemot chapter 23, verse 10. For 6 years you are to sow your fields and harvest the crops. But during the 7th year, yet the land lie unplowed and unused. And the poor among your people may get food from it, and the wild animals may eat what they leave. Do the same with your vineyard and your olive grove. 6 days do your work, but on the 7th day do not work, so that your ox and your donkey may rest, and the slave born in your household and the alien as well may be refreshed. Be careful to do everything I have said to you. Do not invoke the name of gods. Do not let them be heard on your lips. 14. 3 times a year you are to celebrate a festival to me. Celebrate the feast of unleavened bread. For 7 days eat bread made without yeast, as I commanded you. Do this at the appointed time in the month of Abib, for in that month you came out of Mitzrayim. No one is to appear before me empty-handed. Celebrate the feast of harvest with the first fruits of the crops you sow in your field. Celebrate the feast of ingathering at the end of the year when you gather in your crops from the field. 3 times a year all the men are to appear before the sovereign Yahuwah. Do not offer the blood of a sacrifice to me along with anything containing yeast. The fat of my festival offerings must be kept until morning, or must not be kept until morning. Bring the best of the first fruits of your soil to the house of Yahuwah your Savior, and do not cook a young goat in its mother's milk. Verse 20. See, I am sending a Malak ahead of you to guard you along the way and to bring you to the place I have prepared. Pay attention to him and listen to what he says. Do not rebel against him. He will not forgive your rebellion, since my name is in him. If you listen carefully to what he says and do all that I say, I will be an enemy to your enemies and oppose those who oppose you. My Malak will go ahead of you and bring you into the land of the Amorites, Hittites, Perizzites, Canaanites, Hivites, and Jebusites, and I will wipe them out.
And it is so.
And it is so.
Now, the importance of understanding this, we're following a pattern. Now, in Shemot chapter 23, we are seeing the establishing or the establishment of the feasts. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
Very important. Chapter 23 tells us this is the setup of what we look at as what would be their civil laws and the way they are supposed to govern themselves. This is what we look at as a governmental establishment setting up. So everybody knew what they were supposed to do on a year-to-year basis and a yom-to-yom basis. Now it's important that we understand in verse 10 how everything is being established. And for 6 years you are to sow your land and shall gather its increase. The seventh has always been the time of rest. Many people say, well, we get too involved on the seventh, and the seventh is what is not important. What's important is that the Sabbath is the seventh Yom, but you can't separate the two. The seventh Yom is the time of rest. Many people refute it because they say, well, we have the pagan days and we have this. Well, the Gregorian calendar has nothing but pagan names on it. From the months to the days, these are pagan days. But no matter what, when we establish the count still brings us to where we are. The thing that people, when they follow the lunar calendar, is that they establish that they count from one time and they get to the seventh, and then from there they started over again. But what they fail to tell you is that you cannot keep the lunar Sabbath correctly, because it's never going to be the same. Never going to be the same, because you're going to celebrate it on the Tuesday one day, then you'll celebrate it in 1 month, a Thursday, then it constantly goes on. This establishes a system that does not change. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
It does not change. It remains the same. So you can follow it, whether you are blinded, whether you are here or whether you are somewhere else. You can follow it and you won't have to worry about fumbling. Now, once again, it's important that we understand these things. Why is it important? Because if we do this, what happens? Yahuwah will make our enemies become his enemies, and he will keep us in a place of shalom. Now, once again, they were to allow the land to rest. Now, watch this. But the seventh Yom, you are to let it rest and shall leave it, and the poor of your people shall eat, and what they leave, the beasts of the field eat. Do the same with your vineyard and your olive trees. This brought about a balance. Somebody say balance.
Balance.
It brought about a balance. And whenever there is a balance, everybody walks or everybody is content. When there's an imbalance or monopoly going on, it makes things frustrating and makes things imbalanced. Because now you don't know how things are going to come out. This is important to understand. Now watch this. Everybody eats, even the animals, the wild animals. So Yahuwah had a plan and has a plan that nothing goes untaken care of. In other words, you don't have to worry about the animals robbing your garden if you feed them. Even wild animals have a habit. They have a habit. And in other words, this is how I see it, that the Abba was training the animals not to touch until it was their time to come in, that he gave them permission to come in and eat. Because everything works in a system. If you do, and they do this, watch this, they will form the habit that around this time every year, we can go and we can eat. What do they do throughout the year? They continue to eat. But this year, they're able to do more because this is a Sabbath year and not just a Sabbath Yom. So this is so important for us to understand and establish. Everything that the Abba did was to ensure that everything would basically be supportive or depend upon his system. Okay. Now, everything 8. Now listen at this. 6, Yamim, you ought to do work, and on the 7th Yom, you rest, in order that your ox and your donkey might rest, and the son of your female servant. But it's hard to eat on the run, if anybody understands that. Because you're eating and you're still doing. And one thing about the body really digests food better when it is at a relaxed state.
Right.
When it is relaxed, it is able to digest food. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
All right. And in all that I have said to you, take heed and make no mention of the name of other mighty ones. Let it not be heard from your mouth. So he is establishing these things. Watch this. In the midst of a crooked and perverted people. He's saying you have your way to do things and they have their way. Don't stray from that way. Once again, I'm establishing why we are celebrating Shavuot on this Yom. Now, once they got to that, he said, 3 times in the year, you ought to observe a festival to me. The reason this is so important, especially for the brothers is because you have to appear before the Abba 3 times.
Right.
Now, what if you miss that? Now, let's look at it in this manner. When a judge says to a young man or a young woman, you are to appear before me, you have these 3 court dates, and you are to be there. If you don't be there, guess what happens? It shows that you are not concerned. It shows you're disobedient, and it shows that you don't believe the consequences that have been passed are you that you are subject to them.
That's right.
And then you have to understand those that should have died. He said, now I'm giving you an opportunity. I spared you. So now you need to present yourself before me. Are you following me?
Yes.
All right. Guard the festival of unleavened bread. Now listen what he says. 7 young men, you eat unleavened bread, as I commanded you at the time appointed in the month of Abib. For in it you came out of Mitzrayim, and do not appear before me empty-handed. Now, if you notice, he said, guard the festival of what? Unleavened bread. He never said anything about Passover, did he?
No.
He never said anything about Passover in this portion. So you have to understand, many times people take unleavened bread very lightly, and it is one of the most significant and important festivals that we are to celebrate. It's important. Why? Because you have to understand, in that time, it shows that our mindset is Torah and nothing else. Does that mean that we make Yahush obsolete? Absolutely not, because he is the Torah.
Right.
And in that 7 Yamim, we are to show that our dedication, not just for this time, but throughout our lives, is to the Torah, his instructions for our lives.
Right.
We be partakers of those instructions. So it is important that we understand the regard for the Feast of Unleavened Bread, which many times people just think you can eat whatever you want, do whatever you want, and that's not the point. The point of it is even when Yahushua said to the emissaries of the apostles, he said, take this, for this is my body. He specifically said, this is my body, eat of it. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
And this wine is is my blood, which is in the new covenant. So you have to understand, was it saying that Passover was not significant? Absolutely not. But he is showing the most important part is partaking of that what can be partook of all the time.
Yeah.
All the time, which is his instructions for our lives. So it's very important that we not minimize the Feast of Unleavened Bread, which so many people do. Sometimes it's out of ignorance, and then sometimes it's just people, get the mindset, I can't do that. Just eat unleavened bread and water. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
We had unleavened bread, wine, and water. I was content. I didn't want anything else because I want the Abba to know I want only his instructions for my life. I don't need anything else. No substitutes. Are you following me?
Yes.
Now listen what he says. 7 young men, you eat unleavened bread as I commanded you. It's a command. It is not a request. It is a command. At the time appointed in the month of Abib, for in it you came out of Mitzrayim, and do not appear before me empty-handed. Are y'all following me? Everybody sees what I'm saying.
Yes.
I want you to see this with your eyes. It's important we understand this. And the festival or the feast of the harvest, the first fruits of your labors, which you have sown in the field, and the festival of the ingathering at the outgoing of the year, when you have gathered in the fruit of your labor from the field. 3 times in the year, all your males are to appear before the master Yahuwah. Do not offer the blood of my slaughtering with leavened bread, and the fat of my offering shall not remain until morning. Bring the first of the first fruits of your land into the house of Yahuwah, your power. Do not cook a young goat in its mother's milk. Now, once again, he is establishing the way as a people we are supposed to live our lives. You would think, why would he insert that right there? Because what he is saying to us is do not mix, once again, the way that people in other cultures do with the way we've been set, or with the way our way has been set up. Don't take the instructions that have been given to us and mingle them with anything else, because that's what they were doing. They were boiling the babies in the mother's milk because they would take it and they would seed the land with it. And they said that this was a way to bring the crops, because they were worshiping the god of the field. I don't know I can't remember the name, but yes, and that's what they would do, boil it, and they would take that milk and they would basically, like how you see the croppers do now with the airplanes, and they go and they spread it over. This is what they would do because they said that this was the way that they would get the crops to grow because it was an offering to the grain god or goddess. And so it's important that we don't do these things. And this is where, too, many times the rabbis and the sages, when it comes to, once again, rabbinical Judaism, told people they could not eat cheese and meat. This has nothing to do with that. It has nothing to do with that. And for about a year, I followed it because I wanted to be sure. I wanted to make sure I wasn't doing anything wrong. Coming out of Christianity, you become hesitant about a whole lot of things. You become skeptical about a lot of things because in your mind and in your heart, I don't want to mess up. I've already messed up for years. So I got to do this right. And so, we were told you can't eat meat with cheese because it came from this. But once again, this has nothing to do with eating meat and cheese. It has everything to do with working witchcraft and doing what he said. Let not the names of those other mighty ones come out of your mouth, because he knew that the moment you start provoking them through your mouth, you're going to follow after their customs and their traditions.
Right.
And it is so. And that's not what we do. So he said, obey them. Now, we've established that. And once again, established where our count begins. So someone would say, but still, how did you get there? So once we got there, and he said, now let's go to chapter 23 of Wayikra. Now let's go there, and then I'll pick up from what I was saying. And that way, I can make sure everybody's following me.
Yes.
And it is so. All right. Everybody understands.
Yes.
Everybody's understanding. All right. And if you have questions, ask. That's what we hear, so that we can establish this. Now, once again, it's important we understand why. Because to Yom is the day or the Yom that we are celebrating Shavuot. No, we did not post up a lot of things saying Happy Shavuot or whatever, but we are celebrating Shavuot on this Yom, and we're excited about it. Now, as we're turning to Wayikra chapter 23, it is important that we understand the writings, and then from understanding the writings, go into establishing more. Now, I want to read this while you are turning there, and it is about the two calendars present, two clear testimonies marked by which the year of the crucifixion can be identified, which we know talking about the execution of the Mashiach. Now, across the globe, many are becoming aware of the ancient Zadok testimony that the ancient biblical calendar was or is solar-based, and this solar-based calendar is able to historically identify the year of Yahushua Mashiach's, they say crucifixion, but we know execution, from the witness of the timing of the astronomical events in the context of two conflicting religious calendars that were in existence in Yahushua Yom. So it's important that we understand we're not just basing it off of one view, but we're comparing the two. And the one that we end up mostly following all the time is the one that is erroneous. Okay? Now, in the law of Moshe, we are instructed that the objective identification of biblical time and season is to be observed from the behavior of the astronomical luminaries, of whom the sun is the primary authority and the stars are the secondary authority, which we established that in Bereshit 1 and 14. To Yom, through computers, we are able to identify the precise occurrences of the ancient equinoxes that would have anchored, one, the Zadok biblical calendar against, two, the incidences of the conjunctive moons, the rabbinical lunar calendar, which these two calendars anchored on historical astronomical events, together with the counting of Yamim to the appointed biblical festivals as instructed by Moshe in Wayikra chapter 23, where we are right now. We find there is but one single year, that being 30 CE is the period of years from 25 CE to 35 CE, when the astronomical coincidence of the equinox and the conjunctive moon calendars were in a close approximation of but 1 day difference. This year harmonizes with the apostolic testimony of Yahushua Mashiach's last Passover before his execution. All other years from 25 BCE The 35 CE period held astronomical events which were unable to meet the apostolic testimony of the events surrounding his execution. So it's important that we understand that what is coming together to establish how this came to be. Once again, you have two calendars that we're dealing with. One that is based upon the law, which we know came from Abba Yahuwah, which he gave to Moshe, and then that which is established by the rabbinical Judaizers, or those by the priests, and so forth. So we've established this. Now let's look at chapter 23 and let us see what is being said here to establish once again how we maintain and keep up the count. The reason this is important is because if your count is off, then everything else is going to be off.
Right.
And this is why we're constantly bickering and fussing, because we're trying to establish. But if we maintain walking in the word and following his instructions, you can't deviate from that.
Right.
Got to stick with it. All right, chapter 23, beginning with, let's start with verse 1. And we're going to read all the way to let's read all the way to 22. Let's do 6.
And Yahuwah spoke unto Moshe, saying, Speak unto the children of Yasharal, and say unto them concerning the Moedim of Yahuwah, which you shall proclaim to be the set-apart assemblies, even these are my feasts. 6 days shall work be done, but the 7th day is the Sabbath of rest, a set-apart assembly. You shall do no work therein. It is the Sabbath of Yahuwah in all your dwellings. These are the Moedim of Yahuwah, even set-apart convocations which you shall proclaim in their seasons. In the 14th day of the first month at even is Yahuwah's Passover. And on the 15th day at the same month is a Hav Matzah. Unto Yahuwah, 7 days you must eat matzah. And it is so.
And it is so. Now, once again, reading from verse 1 all the way to verse 6. You read to 7 for me? You did 6. Okay, that's fine. Now, from 6 to from 1 to 6, once again, it's important that throughout the writings, Yahuwah always establishes and continues to establish what? His instructions for our lives. Repetition. Repetition is very important to learning and getting a hold or a grasp upon things. This is important. Why is it important? Because he understood the type of people we are. He had to tell them, do not learn the ways of the powers of the people which are around you. I can deal with you without taking up your way of life. That's why he had to tell them, because he knew that our people were susceptible and that we would end up doing the things that he told us not to do. So he constantly kept interjecting what we needed to do as well as what not to do. So he gives the instructions in this manner. And he says, speak to the children of Yasharal and say to them in the appointed times of Yahuwah. Whose appointed times? Yahuwah's appointed times, which are to proclaim as Kodesh Mikra, my Moedim are these. 6 Yamim work is done. So you have to understand the Sabbath is a Moedim. It is a Kodesh time, a set apart time. It is sacred unto the Abba. And when we don't follow his instructions, guess what? We find ourselves missing in action from what? The feast of the Sabbath. This is why it's to be celebrated and not a time of mourning. This is why we fix it up and we fix the food and we have it decorative, because it's a feast. But nowadays people are fasting. Yeah, they're fasting on the Sabbath because I find it better. But you're going against what the Abba said. The only thing we're not to do is work. But we can eat and rest all day long, as long as you don't overeat. That's what we're supposed to do. Now listen what he says. You do no work. It is the Sabbath to Yahuwah in all your dwellings. That means no matter where we are dwelling, no matter where we are, this is what we are supposed to do and how we're supposed to do it. These are the appointed times of Yahuwah. Once again, whose appointed times? Yahuwah's appointed times. And nowhere can you intelligently find that Yahush ever went against the appointed times of Yahuwah. Never. Now, these are the appointed times of Yahuwah, set apart, Mikra, which you are to proclaim at their appointed times. When? At their appointed times. But if my count is off, then I can't do it at what? At the appointed time. This is what causes a lot of problems. Once again, it's amazing as we are gardeners and we are getting into more agricultural things. We found that one thing about a seed pack, I don't have one near me close that you can put your hands on, do you? If you can, get it for me. I want to show you something that remains consistent. No matter what, I don't care if you plant carrots or whatever you plant, systematically, okay, this is broccoli, Toda. One thing about broccoli, without fail, every year you plant it when? The same time every year. It never changes. Why? Because this is the system that it was created to follow. So when you look at it, April through June is up west. March through April is kind of like in the Carolinas, if I'm looking at this right. February to March and July and August is more like down towards Florida. Wait, no, that's not Florida. No, July to December is more like down near Florida. February, March, and July through August is more like on the border of where we are in the Carolinas. And March through April and June, July is kind of like we're bordering that area. So every year without fail, when you are planting broccoli, you do it the same time every year in order for it to grow. What? The same time for you to do what? Harvest it when? The same time every year. Do you not know if people didn't follow this, the stores and everything would be jacked up? Because nothing would be what? On time. Nothing would be on time. The count and the season would be off. So once again, if Yahuwah knew that this would be our way of life, and he put this in a manner to where we can understand it, how much more did he put it in the writings for us to understand it and it not go over our heads if we would just be willing to listen? No matter what plants, no matter what seeds you buy, if they follow according to, watch this, the equinox, the season, it doesn't change. It doesn't change. This is how we're able to harvest at a certain time and keep everything flowing. If you miss that time, guess what happens? It throws your harvest off. And if it throws the harvest off, it throws what off? It throws your food off. It throws all of that off. So it's important to understand these things for seeds were set in place. So the same thing with us. If we follow it the same way every year, then we're going to get the same results every year without fail. When we don't question, how come that's off? And I'm talking about 30 days, 19 days. You know why sometimes we don't catch it? Because we have not really made ourselves conscious of these things. We just follow a pattern. And in just following a pattern, my question is, are you just doing it to say you did it? Or are you doing it truly because you want to obey Abba Yahuwah? Now, it's important to understand. Now, once again, this is how he gave it to us to do it. Now, many would come up with the argument, well, our days are off. This is off. That is off. One thing is for sure is that seasons, seasons. All you have to do is watch the animals. I think it was last year. We noticed. Was it last year or the year before? Yeah, last year, right? Last year, right in February last year. Because you have to understand, we follow seasons. We don't follow 30-day increments. We follow seasons. Because one thing about a season, seasons have somewhere up to 92 to fluctuating 92 to 100 days. That's a season. So within that season, if it's the winter season, everything is going to die out within that time. The moment you start seeing light, that means, hey, the season is starting to change. We're seeing season change. Last year, I believe it was around February, which February for us would be, according to the Gregorian calendar, February for the Ibram calendar, it would be Shabbat. So last year around that time, we began to see a difference. We began to see it heat up. We began to see a change, and we were like, hey, wait a minute. This is not this is showing us something different. We started seeing the difference in the season. Are you following me?
Yes.
We start seeing that difference. Now watch this, but immediately after that, we start seeing a change. We start seeing things digress, and we start seeing different where it didn't remain. But what I'm saying is we saw that, but we didn't see any animals doing anything. The moment I started seeing bees buzzing, I knew then there's a change, because the animals are not going to be fooled. One thing about animals, animals are not going to be fooled. There's a time clock in animals that says, nope, it ain't time, so I'm not going to do it. Most of the time they say if it's rogue, it's because it either has rabies or something else that's going on with it, that's going to cause it to go and do different. But as long as it's doing what it does naturally as a animal, it's going to do what it's supposed to do when the season changes. Okay. Now, one thing about that, somebody will say, but if we follow the count, how does that show us? Well, you have to understand, once again, anytime you see different things pop up and happen, that's when we have to go back again and kind of look at what was taking place. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
Once again, in seasons, you might have a few days off. Why would you have a few days off? Because of the season, determining them 92 to 100. Because just say we have a longer winter. Does that throw the season? Does that throw the time clock off for when, according to Bereshit 1:14, does that make it obsolete? Absolutely not. That means it's going to either be on the 19th, the 20th, or the 21st. But I can guarantee you, it's still going to be around that time clock, because this is when the luminaries all line up and do what the Abba has told them to do. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
That's important for us to understand. Now, once again, with that being said, these are his appointed times. Now, in verse 5, he says, in the first month, on the 14th yom of the month, between the evenings, is the Passover to Yahuwah. Once again, it's important to understand that these things had to be done. Evening meaning that it is getting ready to go into, watch this, the next day, but it is not the next day. Now, according to the Jewish way of doing things, they do it like the day at night begins the next day. What you have to understand, when Yahush said there are 12 hours in a yom, he was talking about work yomim. Because most of the time we work here, people work here 8 hours, and sometimes what? 10, 11, 12 hours. He was talking about a work time, not how long that day or itself is established, but he was talking about the work time. So when you look at how they've established it, this is why when people keep the Sabbath, they say on Yom Shishi, which is a Friday, that the Sabbath begins at sunset. Now watch this. The moment the sun sets, they say this is when the Sabbath begins. The moment it sets on the Sabbath is when it is over. The problem comes in is that we're still in that Yom. That Yom has not changed. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
People say, but well, that's because where you are, because y'all are in America and what have you. This is why these days are like this, and you can't follow, but we're not over in Yasharal either. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
So we are still in that time. So the important thing to understand, once again, is how this was established. Now, you have to understand, especially when they start putting daylight savings in, which is a trick. It's a trick. You don't save time. You don't lose time. Time is what it is. But they play on us and make us believe we get more time by turning clocks back and turning them forward. You can't go against what the Abba has said. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
So once again, when we start following up behind these, it's going to make it look off. It's going to make it seem ridiculous. So this is how they do it. So to Yom, many people to Yom round about, say 7 or 8, their Sabbath is going to be over.
Yes.
But we're still in the same Yom. This Yom has not come. Why? Because the establishing of the new Yom has not presented itself by what? Showing us light.
Right.
You don't get light till the next Yom, which will be the first day, which many know as Sunday. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
which is the next Yom. And so it is important that we understand it. And this is why he said, leave nothing. Now, watch, he said, if anything was left over, you're to burn it. You can't eat any of that which would be left over. Okay. Now, and on the 15th of the Yom this month is the festival of unleavened bread to Yahuwah. 7 Yamim you shall eat unleavened bread. 2 festivals, Passover and unleavened bread. On the first Yom, you have a Kodesh Mikra. In other words, that first Yom when we prepare, that is a Yom, no work is to be done. And he says unto us, and you shall bring an offering made by fire to Yahuwah for 7 Yamim. On the 7th Yom is a Kodesh Mikra. You do no servile work. So it is a Sabbath unto us. So between that time, you do know, you are able to bring the offerings and do. But on that 1st and 7th, it is a time of rest. Now watch this. And Yahuwah spoke to Moshe, saying, speak to the children of Yasharal, you say, and shall say to them, when you come into the land which I give you, and shall reap its harvest, then you shall bring a sheaf of the first fruits of your harvest to the priest. Now, because we are not in our land yet, does that mean that we're still not supposed to bring an offering to Abba Yahuwah? Absolutely not. You present yourself. Because we're new, right? I believe every Sabbath that we celebrate, we become a new a person in him. Why? Because the more we learn and the more we are obtained and the more we are getting from him causes us to shed the old man and come alive to the new man. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
So this is important to understand. Now watch what he says here as well. Now he says, and he shall wave the sheaf before Yahuwah for your acceptance. On the morrow after the Sabbath, the priest. Now, after the morrow. Now, you have to understand after the Sabbath. Now, we just come out of, when you understand unleavened bread. You come out of unleavened bread. Unleavened bread presents you or puts you in a place that it is Yom Shishi that we come out of. We have the day of rest. So after the day of rest or the Yom of rest, that next Yom, which would be the first day, is when you offer, and that's when the sheaf offering, or that is when it is offered, because that's the only time that he can wave it to the Abba. Now, watch what takes place afterwards. Now, we look at, let's see. Verse 11, and he shall wave the sheaf before Yahuwah for your acceptance. On the morrow after the Sabbath, the priest shall wave it. And on that Yom, when you wave the sheaf, you shall prepare a male lamb, a year old, a perfect one, as a burnt offering to Yahuwah. And its grain offering, 2/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with oil, and an offering made by fire to Yahuwah, sweet fragrance, and its drink offering, 1/4 of a hin of wine. So once again, someone say, but if we're not there, what do we do in between this time? We still offer ourselves. We still offer them, just like we don't offer up lambs and goats, but we still keep the Passover. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
So this time, instead of offering lambs and goat, what do? We offer ourselves. We present ourselves unto Abba Yahuwah. What? According to Romans 12:1, present yourself a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable unto Abba Yahuwah, which is what? Your reasonable service.
Right.
So we still are presenting ourselves. Now look at what he says in 14. And you do not eat bread or roasted grain or fresh grain until the same Yom that you have brought an offering to your power, a law forever throughout your generations and all your dwellings. In other words, he's saying you can't eat of the grain of that land yet because it has not presented itself. So we can't give to him what has not been given to us. But watch this. You can give him what you already have. You know, follow me?
Yes.
Now, listen what he says. And from the morrow after the Sabbath, from the Yom that you brought the sheaf of the wave offering, you shall count for yourselves 7 complete Sabbaths. Now, I'm going to show you. We counted 7 complete Sabbaths. So when you count Adar, but not Adar 2, it would only be 1, Adar 1. Now, someone would ask why. I want to show you something. Let me find it on my calendar. All right. Now, I want to take a break right here, and I want to show you something. The reason why many people got their count for April, 19th, to take the for Passover. Now, we're going to do the count from that time to 19th. Now, we're going to do the count from April. We celebrated Peshat, Passover, on the 4th, right? Yep, we did it the 3rd, the evening. We did it that way. So we start our count. And so you start that count from there. But I want to show you something. I'm going to do this, and then we'll come back and count the leap year. So when we start our count, because we from that time, you don't start your count in the time of your feast. You start it after the Sabbath. So if you started after the Sabbath, it would be on that first day, which would be what? The 7th, right? So if you count from there, you start 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 21, 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 to 6 to 7, 28. Another piece of paper. All right, let me go back. April. Now we count 27, 28, 9, 30, get you all the way to 35, which would be the 29th of Nisan. Then you come to here, which would be the 42, which would be the 11th, which would be May. Then you come to the 18th, which is to Yom, right?
Yes.
Which would be 49, which would give us, which is 49, you count 7, which gives you 50, but the Sabbath would be the time that you keep the Shavuot. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
So this is where we get our count. That's how we get our count. We count all the way to here. Now, excuse me, you count it after, once again, you count it after the Sabbath. Now, on the calendar, I'm going to show you something once again. Because of the rabbis and sages, I'm not confusing anybody.
No.
I want to make sure everybody's with me. All right. All right. Now, excuse me. Let us look at this. I want to read this to you, and I want to show you something. All right. All right. Excuse me. Okay, hold on. Give me just a second. All right. Now, I want to read this to you and show you how they came in and interfered with how this was to be done. All right. Let's start. All right. Okay. Now, the reason why some advocate the Jerusalem equinox is the beginning of the year. Those who argue that the first Yom of the biblical year must begin on Jerusalem equinox, which is the 16th of March. The Yom of the mathematical estimation of the equal Yom and night hours occurring in Jerusalem do so based on their private theological interpretation of the book of Enoch. So if they're using the book of Enoch and they're doing it there, but also doing it here, it's going to cause the count to be off. Now I'm trying to find where they did this. Now Enoch identified that at the great sign event of the beginning of the biblical year was the sun moving across the equator and the change of the seasons. To Yom, we know that event is the vernal equinox. And Enoch identified that along with this astronomical event that marked a point in the circuit of the sun, the Ibn word tekufa, an associated sign that of equal Yom and night have hours also occurred. In this revelation, we see that Enoch is indicating that in his Yom, the equator was closely positioned in a proximity of the covenant land at that time. This is because the occurrence of the equinox is highly dependent on the refraction of light on the surface of the earth. The astronomical testimony of creation reveals that there is only one place where the equinox and equinox occur simultaneously on the same Yom. That is when one is positioned at the equator. To Yom, the covenant land is situated at some 40 degrees north in latitude from the equator. Hence, we see the difference in Jerusalem of some 5 Yamim between the early occurrence of the refracted light sign of the equinox, which would be March 16th. That was for 2014. To the actual observable real sun occurrence equinox, which would be March 21st. Y'all understand me?
Yes.
You sure?
Yes.
All right. So once again, if you're following it, trying to follow from that proximity, you're going to be off by days. But if you follow it according to the real sun, then you're going to follow it. And it's going to bring us to this day, as I told you before, March the 19th, March the 20th, or March the 21st. Those three, you can't miss it with those three yum. Now this is why. Now, just why do some folk single out the equinox sign from Enoch's testimony and choose it as being the authoritative sign of the beginning of the biblical year, while completely ignore the greater event of the sun's traverse of the equator, reflecting a point on the Earth's true orbit around the sun, and which is globally measurable on a single yom? Are you hearing me?
Yes.
Now, what motives do these folks to deliberately ignore the greater physical reality of the change of the season, which is the equinox, thereby ignoring the authoritative testimony of creation itself and the instructions of Bereshit 1 and 14, and prefer instead a mathematical means, average estimate calculation of hours to identify when there are approximate equal hours of Yom and night hours in Jerusalem as the authoritative declaration of the first Yom of the biblical year? That's a question. Why would they want to do this when the equinox is not observable in any way but a calculation of time, and is a variable index affected by degrees of latitude through the refraction of light, in contrast to the single true sun observation that occurs on a single 24-hour Yom across the globe? Are you hearing me?
Yes.
Now, which the equinox heralds? The answer is to be found in their adoption of rabbinical traditional definitions and commentaries defining that the equinox simply defined as a yom when equal day and night hours occur. It is the rabbinics that specifically define the equinox in this way, rather than a definition that occurs with creation's testimony of the completion of the Earth's orbit around the sun. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
All right. Now, causing change of the agricultural seasons. It is the rabbinics who traditionally interpret the meaning of the word tekufa as not meaning the circuit of the sun or the going around as it meant to be understood in written scripture, but rather they advocate that the equinox is only that day when equal day and night hours in a day can be identified. Once again, we see the rabbinic worldview making translations in a particular way that are religious rather than based on creation's law, and which denies that Yahuwah's law, as presented by Moshe, presents physical truth, but rather they reduce such truth to man's objective experience and definition of reality. In defining the equinox as the period of equal day and equal night hours, rather than the real observation of the sun reflecting the astronomical end and the beginning of the Earth's annual circuit of the sun. Now, once again, we understand there are certain things in here that as we read, we understand as flat earthers. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
We understand that we don't believe in the globe, but we believe in flat earth. And I still believe that the flat earth can still circle the sun. Are you hearing me? It can. It can. The rabbinics hide creation's astronomical testimony as intended in the biblical term of the tekufa. It's just like taking a square. Can a square go around? Can it? Yes, it can. So once again, you have to understand Yahuwah is not ignorant and he's not stupid. But we understand the concept is that it is not the equinox, but the equinox. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
And understanding this, then we understand that the count, if we follow it accordingly, is not going to what? Change that drastic. It may be a difference in 1 to 3 days. I'll put it in that 1 to 3 days, but nothing higher than that. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
Why am I saying this? Because I want you to know this is how we got to our count for Tiyam to celebrate Shavuot. Now, from what I've showed you, you can't argue with what I've already showed you in the writings. Can you? You cannot. Now, I want to show you what they did. Once again, we're looking at what? Rabbinical traditions. And by it being rabbinical traditions, this is what they've come about and this is what they've done. Now, I want to show you. I think I already did something else. how they went in, because for a moment I used to believe, okay, but it's supposed to be according to us seeing the barley and all of these things. But you have to understand, even if you see the barley is just a testimony of that what is taking place in the Shemayim. Because if there is no change, then what will allow the earth to testify that that what is taking place in the Shemayim is to activate that what is taking place in the earth. The earth is the testimony of that what is taking place. Are y'all hearing me?
Yes.
All right. Now, so when we began to look at these things, this is why, because of the rabbis, that was what they wanted to keep in circulation. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
All right. Now I want to show you. And the reason why, once again, the rabbis did what they did, and I'm going to show you the count. Okay. Now, we're going to go back and we're going to look at this. Now, in March, which is Adar 1, we saw Adar 1, and then we go into Adar 2. Let's go back to what is in the Gregorian calendar, February, Shavat to Adar 1. Adar 1 begins on February, or began on February the 6th, which people would call Rosh Hashanah. Now, if you go all the way, you go February the 7th would be Adar 2, 3, and you continue to count it. Now, if we start our count and we go from here and we look at how these things are going in Adar 1, Adar 2 is added in. And I want to show you where Adar 2 comes in. It comes in March the 8th. When instead of it being Adar 2, we should have gone right into March. We should have gone into April, into Nisan. But they added another month. That's where you get Adar 2 from, which is a leap year month. Somebody said, we don't believe in it. We don't believe in it, but you still have people that follow it. I hope, am I making myself clear?
Yes.
I'm not confusing anybody.
No.
All right, I want to make sure of that. And I'm showing you based upon a calendar. This is a calendar. This is a calendar. And I took it offline and went back and wrote in it. Now I'm going to show you. The reason there is a leap year is because what the rabbis and sages did was they added 30 more days. Why? Because the rabbis in that time wanted to be sure that there was a sign that the barley and the wheat were growing. That if they didn't see that sign, now watch this, that meant that they needed more time. That's not what the Abba said. Because we don't base it off of the barley and the wheat. We base it off of the seasons changing. If we don't ever see a sign of the barley and the wheat, we still have the sign in Shemayim. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
That's very important for us to understand. And the reason I am stressing this is because when we find our count off, we can't be obedient. Now I'm going to show you how it came up to the 19th. Now you have Adar 2, which comes in, which right after Adar 1, Nisan should have been placed in there. But they removed it, then they added Adar as a second month, which made it add 30 days. Now, when you count from that, we start at March 8th, which the leap year began, and you count it. So according to them, the first Yom of spring would have been March the 20th, and watch this, and it would still been in the month of Adar, not in Nisan. You follow me?
Yes.
So we count from there. We go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. I stopped at 16, 18. All right. 19, 20, 21, 2, 3 to 4 to 5, and 6 to 7 to 8 to 9, 30 to 1 to 2, 3 to 4, 35, 36, 37, 30 to 9, 40, 41, 42, 43, 4, 5, or 6, 47, 48, 49. Our time would not be on the right time, but our time would be, wait, I did it wrong. Let me go back, y'all. I'm going ahead of myself. Sorry. All right. We're talking about in April, the feast of unleavened bread and Passover. I'm thinking too fast. I went too fast. All right, let's go back. Once again, Adar 2, beginning in March. February, we got February, which is Adar 1. And then from Adar 1, we're supposed to go into Nisan. February, March, we're supposed to go into Adar 1. From February, March, April. We got February, Adar 1. Then you go into March. Then from March, you go into April, which gives us Nisan. Then from there, because you know our stuff, it overlaps in the Gregorian calendar. So you'll have 2 months or 2 seasons in that time according to the Gregorian. So just like I say, in May, we had Nisan and Iyar, which is in here. Iyar began on May 6th, according to the Ibram calendar. May 6th, once again, is the Gregorian day for that calendar. But Iyar 1 is for the Hebrew calendar. Do you follow me?
Yes.
So when you have the two together, you're going to have these numbers and these times up there. But what I want to establish once again is how they did the Feast of Unleavened Bread. So I got to go back. I went just a little bit too fast. Going too fast. All right. Now we go back to March and we come into April. So we establish our time, okay, to do the count. Now, because it is a leap year, and because of the leap year, it began on the 8th of March, which gave us Adar 2 instead of Nisan, which gives us an extra 31 days. Gives an extra, actually, okay, 29, yeah, gives an extra 31 Yamim. Now, you have those. So if I'm still in Adar and I don't begin my count until Nisan, which is going into March, April, May, going into June, Sivian, my time is going to be off. So we take the feast from there. Just say we count from, let's see, we start our count in March. We did it March 20th. So we count go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and then we go 12, 13, 14. So on the 14th, if we say our count begins on the 14th to take for unleavened bread, and then Passover would be on the 5th. So we had the 3rd and the 4th, which we did Passover, and then unleavened bread. But if you start your count beyond that, your count is going to take you to Nisan, the 14th, which would have been April the 19th. Okay. So if you go back up and you start your count from Nisan, it would start you at April the 6th instead of in March on the 20th. Does that make sense? Because you're not following according to the changing of the seasons. You're following it according to the month. So if we start our count on the 1st of Nisan, then it will bring us to what? It will bring us to the 19th of April, which would be the Nisan, the 14th, which would have fallen on a Friday, and unleavened bread would have fallen on the 15th, which would have been on the 20th on the Sabbath. Y'all see that?
Yes.
Are you understanding?
Yes.
You sure? Okay. Now, once again, let's look at it again. Let me back up because I don't want to confuse anybody. Now, when you have the calendars from March, April, and May, we're just dealing with these 3 months. In these months, you have in March, Adar 1, which coincides with the Gregorian calendar, March. In that month, you have 29 to 31 Yamim. Now, March the 20th, which would have been for us, Nisan, a little bit calendar. March 20th, which would have been for us if it would have followed it according to without putting the Adar 2 in there, bring it up. March would have been for us. Let's go back. Nisan, Adar 2 is the 13th. We go back, would have put us at the 20th of March, but would have given us the 1st of March. You hear what I'm saying? The 1st of Nisan. The 1st of Nisan for us would have been, which was for us, March 20th. For them, it was not. It was April 6th for them, which pushes it up. You follow me now?
Yes.
All right. So if our Nisan is on the 20th, and we count from there, March 20th is Nisan 1st. We count from there. it gives us the 3rd and the 4th as the 14th and the 15th. If their count is Nisan 1st, now watch this, after you have added a second month to fill in that gap to make sure that there is a sign, that is what they did to make a leap year. So now Nisan 1st is on the 6th, and when we counted, instead of being up here closer to where we were last year, you have to give a count for the leap year, which adds 29 days, which now takes you into Nisan in a whole new system or cycle, which now Nisan, the 14th would fall on April 19th, and Nisan 15th would fall on April 20th. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, I want to make sure. It can be confusing because of the counts being off. So instead of Nisan 1st actually being in the time it's supposed to be in March the 1st, on the 20th, Nisan 1st being March 20th, it ended up being being in April on the 6th, the beginning of Nisan. How did that happen? Leap year, leap month. You put that month in there, it extends the time. And extending the time throws what? The count off. Now, from what I have shown to you all and explained to you all, can you see how this throws everything off?
Yes.
That's what I want to make sure, so that people can understand why we are doing what we're doing, and understanding that there are still devices and there are still people manipulating and doing the things they do because they still want to be in control. You have to understand, those of later years died, they still pass this doctrine on to others, and people are still adhering to it. So now we're in, according to the Gregorian and according to the Ibram calendar, we are now in the month of Iyar, because today is the 18th, according to them. Once again, but if you do it according to them, that's where we are. But we don't do it according to them. You follow me?
Yes.
All right. So according to Yom, May the 18th would be the Omar count of 28 days, and tonight count would be 29. That puts you off how many days? 20 days. You follow me? So they won't be celebrating Shavuot until in June, because of the count is off. Now we have to understand, you have to make a decision. Which one are you going to follow? The one that Abba Yahuwah created and gave to us, or the ones that the rabbi set in place? Because if you remove Adar 2, it's going to put you right at the place we are now. Y'all follow me?
Yes.
This is why it is important that we study and we not just follow what is put before us. Now, once again, it's important that we understand that. Now, he said, count these times. And when it gets you to the 7th Sabbath, now we're going to go back and we're going to count from that time. 7 Sabbaths. All right, from that time. So you have, from the Sabbath, you have April, let's see. Is on the 3rd before, say, that Sabbath. So we start counting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 puts us right there at that Sabbath. So we count that Sabbath. Y'all hear me?
Yes.
Count the Sabbath after, count after the Sabbath. So if we count them, that's that Sabbath. Then we count another Sabbath. That's 1, 2, 3, April, 4, 5, 6. Put us there. 7. Okay. Check this. Oh, I did that wrong. Okay. All right. Yeah. I had to check myself again. I was like, okay, whoa, wait a minute now. All right. Now you can't. If you do it on the calendar, it's gonna come up. It's gonna be wrong. But now I'll give you what you have to do. Now, accounting from that time. So once again, we come to the 18th, which is our 7th Sabbath, according to counting it from the Nisan calendar. Are y'all following me?
Yes.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah. And Catch it. Like, hold up now. Yeah, because if you do it just according to the Gregorian calendar, it's going to be off. It's going to be off. But if you do it according to how the Sabbaths are set, and when we celebrate it, Peshat, it's going to put us right where we're supposed to be. Okay, so that's once again 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So it puts us right at 7, which would be the 29th count of counting of the Omer. Okay, so once again, if you take out the Adar 2, then you see it takes, in other words, 29 days out of there. So if you remove that month out of there, you still have the Nisan, which is only 29 days, which sets you up at the right place. Okay, that's what is important, because if we don't establish this, then what happens? Then our count is off. And if our count is off, then we can't do. Counting from that time, once again, to where we are now, establishes that. And the way we count from that, once again, is our count begins in what? Nisan 1, and not from according to the calendar that they have given unto us. Because if you count from that, it's going to be off. You follow me?
Yes.
Very important. All right. I wanted to establish that so that they would know. Now, once again, I want to read this, and then we're going to pray. All right. Once again, let's look at this. Once again, we understand that they wanted to do what? Undermine. Okay. Word Tekufa. The Ibram word Tekufa is an original Ibram text of the Bible and includes the equinoxes as well as the solstice. Tekufa, mean plural, is interpreted to mean seasons and literally means to completely circuit or to go around, and thus directly refers to the astronomical orbit and not equal day and night hours. The 4 seasons of the year are called Tekufat. Thus, Tekufat refers to the beginnings of the 4 seasons that go around in the annual solar year. Tekufa stands for the true observation of the sun and not the meaning sun. Computer calculation equations used to identify the equinox as posted on modern day calendars. Once again, the calendars. The Tekufa singular month 1 in the biblical year denotes the sun at the point of the vernal equinox, northern hemisphere. The next Tekufa denotes the summer solstice. The third Tekufa denotes the autumnal equinox, and the 4th Tekufa denotes the winter solstice. So it's important that we understand each one of these, and then they go into talking about some other things, which is still important. But once again, we go from Bereshit 1 and 14. The 4 Tekufa of the biblical year are closely associated with the sun's perceived position in the constellations of the stars. This can be found in Bereshit 1 and 14. Authority of the sun and the stars in declaration of biblical time. The moon is not a primary indicator. So it's important that we understand that. Because the moon is not a primary indicator, many times people tend to do that. Now, one person asked me about this, and we're going to go over here, and then we're going to pray. Let's look at Yashia. I think it's 47 and 7, or it might be 7 and 47. And I want to show something. Yeah, it's not 747. It's going to be, I believe it's 47 and 7. Yashia. Yeah, let me see. Let me make sure this is it. No. I'm looking for. Okay, we have 47 and 13. Yeah, let me see. I think that's it. Yeah. All right. Let's start at verse 9. Let's start at verse 9, and we're gonna read all the way to 13.
Yashiyahu,
Mm-hmm.
chapter 47, verse 9 through 13.
Mm-hmm.
These 2 things will happen to you suddenly in one day: loss of children and widowhood, They will happen to you in their entirety, in spite of your many sorceries and the potency of your spells. You were secure in your wickedness. You said, no one sees me. Your wisdom and knowledge led you astray. You said to yourself, I exist, and there is no one else. But disaster will happen to you. You will not know how to avert it, and it will fall on you, but you will be unable to ward it off. Devastation will happen to you suddenly and unexpectedly. So take your stand with your spells and with your many sorceries, which you have wearied yourself with from your youth. Perhaps you will be able to succeed. Perhaps you will inspire terror. You are worn out with your many consultations, so let them stand and save you, the astrologers who observe the stars, who predict monthly what will happen to you. And it is so.
And it is so. Now, we're going to look at 47 and 13. You are exhausted by your many counsels. Let the astrologers, the stargazers, and those who prognosticate by the new moon stand up and save you from what is coming upon you. Now, you have to understand, this was not a positive thing that the Abba was saying. He looked at this as being erroneous. Now, when he says, and those who prognosticate by the moon, by the new moons, and stand up and save you. What were they doing by the new moon? They were following the new moon as a means to establish their way of life. That's what prognosticators is, just like a soothsayer. And so he was dealing with them. And someone said, well, what about that verse? That verse is not a positive verse when it comes to following the moon. That's actually should be a deterrent for us to follow the moon, because Abba Yahuwah was getting on them concerning prognosticate those that were dealing with the moon. Once again, he says, you are exhausted by your many counsels. Let the astrologers, the stargazers, and those who prognosticate by the new moon stand up and save you from what is coming upon you. So he said, let them do it. Since you want to listen to me and don't want to follow my instructions, let them save you. So it's important that we follow this, and that we make sure that we are not doing things that are not in the Abba's approval. So we don't follow the moon, we follow solar, according to Bereshit 1 and 14. And it is so. And it is so. All right. Wanted to bring that out so that we could see this, and so that we can establish these things, and really be able to look at the things that are important for us, and how we are supposed to follow in the things that he's given unto us as his people. I know that this can be a very touchy teaching, because you have still so many theories out there, and those that uphold and revere the Enoch's way, Enoch's calendar, and so forth. And so because an Enoch calendar and even the book of Enoch is fragmented, many of the things that are put in there was put in there because that's what they kind of ad-libbed, if you want to use, they put in there. So many people follow that, and they believe that that's the right one. But my prayer is that we will all come in agreement, and that we can come to a place in our lives with the instructions of the Abba to be able to celebrate the times in their season at the right time, and not be all over the place. Because once again, the Abba is seeking us to be the example. And if we're all, let's be willing to accept correction, but let's be willing to do it in a manner that is not offensive. And that you're trying to belittle anybody, because we're all striving to be obedient to him, and to do what he's called us to do. And the number one thing is to keep these feasts, and to keep the Sabbath, because it's not a request, it's a command. And so I pray on this Yom that the Abba will continue to lead and guide you, continue to lead and guide us, and help us, so that we are fortified, and so that we can continue to do what he's placed in us to do without hesitation, without reservation. Very important. And so we appreciate him for that, what he's doing, that what he's done, that what he's yet going to do. And it is so. And it is so. Abba Yahuwah, we told you for this time of Sabbath rest, a time of celebration, commemoration. We ask Abba Yahuwah that you will watch over us, wash us, cleanse us, and approve the things that you have placed in our lives as we continue to go hard after you, as we continue, Abba Yahuwah, to give our hearts, our minds, our souls, our everything to you, that it would be a time that you would embellish us with your presence, that you would lead, guide us, and continue, Abba Yahuwah, to allow us to have a hunger and thirst after your uprightness. I ask, Abba Yahuwah, that if there be anything found in us that's not right, that does not receive your approval, that you forgive us and that you cleanse us, so that we could truly be that people that are established and stand before you, Yam and Layla, to proclaim your truth throughout the hearing of our people, the people and the children, the nation, our people, a royal priesthood, Yasharal. I ask, Abba Yahuwah, that you will baruch us on this Yam and continue to cause us to grow and to develop in the things that you have placed in us. I total you, Abba Yahuwah, for that what you're doing, that what you've done, and that what you're yet going to do. In the mighty name of Yahush al-Mashiach. And it is so. And it is so. Come on, put your hands together. And it is so. Once again, I want to say to you, may the Abba Baruch you, keep you, as he continues to baruch us, as he continues to embellish us with his instructions for our lives. I told out the Abba for his son, Yahushua Mashiach, and I pray that the Abba will continue to lead and guide you. Once again, I am Aliyah Yashua, and I am the leader of Messengers of Yahuwah's Kingdom, Bread and Leaf congregation located in South Carolina. I want you to remember, here at Messengers of Yahuwah's Kingdom, Hebraic Belief Congregation, this is the place where the Torah does the body excellent. Until next time, may Abba Yahuwah Baruch Atah and keep you in his shalom until we meet again. Also, I want you to remember that you've been touched by Champion TV, a place where the champions reside. And it is so.
It is so.